When a billionaire checks his mansion's nanny cam, he doesn't catch a thief. He sees a young mother and her 3-month-old twins locked in a bathroom, while a loyal housekeeper sets the perfect trap with a missing gold watch. Trust before proof or proof before trust? When boardroom pressure, neighborhood gossip, and the law all close in, can one doctor protect the family he's just begun to love, or will old obsessions win? If this hooked you, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. But let's begin. The storm rolled over Chicago like an omen, a low rumble pressing against the windows of the Bennett house. In the gleaming kitchen, white quartz counters, copper pots hanging in a perfect row, Evelyn Harper's voice cracked the hush like glass. Get out. Right now. Her fingers, veined and strong from 20 years of polishing other people's silver, clamped around Maya Brooks's forearm. I'm not letting a thief stay under Dr. Bennett's roof. Maya's back hit the pantry door. She shifted her grip to keep from dropping her 3-month-old twins, Jonah squirming, Jack already crying, their tiny fists rooting for comfort. I didn't take anything, she said, breath hitching. Please, Evelyn, you've known me 6 weeks. I clean the library every morning the same way you cleaned it today. Evelyn's grey eyes were flat, unblinking. The pocket watch is gone. The one that belonged to his father. You expect me to believe it just walked out? Maya's heart slammed. She looked past Evelyn into the living room. The mahogany display cabinet stood open, one velvet stand empty. She had dusted around that watch with a microfiber cloth and 2 hands that shook because Jonah had. Colic and Jack had slept only 40 minutes, and she'd been trying so hard to do this job, perfectly, because this job meant rent and formula and diapers. It was there at 10, Maya whispered. I swear to God, don't swear at me. Evelyn yanked open the laundry room door. You can explain yourself when Dr. Bennett gets home. You can't lock me in there. The boys need to eat and Evelyn pushed her shoulder. Then feed them. The door shut. A key turned. The bolt snicked like a gavel. The laundry room was a white box, tile floor, a humming washer, a tiny high window that showed nothing but the hard grey underside of the sky. Maya slid down the door with her back and settled on the floor, crossing her legs to make a lap. She kissed each damp forehead. Hey, I've got you, she whispered, unclipping her nursing tank. Jonah first? He latched with desperate gulps. Jack hiccuped, still fussing, and she rocked her knee to keep him bouncing as she hummed the melody her mother used to hum over a tiny apartment stove. Her brain frothed with fragments, the cabinet, the microfiber cloth, the way the kitchen smells like lemon oil and coffee after noon, the way Dr. Bennett, Lucas, always dropped his hospital ID on the counter before saying hello to the boys. 6 weeks of a rhythm that felt almost like a life. Bottles sterilized, naps charted in a spiral notebook, tiny socks paired in a ceramic bowl near the back door. She'd used to be a hotel housekeeper on the night shift. "You're good with details," the agency had said. "Private families pay better." She had felt lucky. Lucky to land with a pediatric surgeon who lined up his days in neat rows, and a house manager who knew every squeak in the floorboards. "Evelyn," she called, trying to keep her voice soft for the twins. "I need water." Silence. Then her phone buzzed in the pocket of her leggings. She fished it out with one free hand. One new notification, front door ring detected motion. She inhaled. If Lucas had come home early, he'd hear the twins. He'd ask why the laundry door was locked. You can save your breath, Evelyn said through the door, voice suddenly syrupy. "I'll handle this." There were footsteps. The faint baritone of Lucas in the foyer. "Afternoon, Evelyn. Why's the alarm panel beeping?" Shoes on hardwood. The jingle of keys, a pause. "Where's Maya?" "The boys usually emergency," Evelyn said. The syrup had chilled. "Oh, you should sit down." Maya's throat squeezed. She adjusted Jonah and switched him to the other side, rocking Jack faster, as if a rhythm could be a shield. In the living room, Lucas shrugged off his coat, raindrops spattering the slate entry. He was still in scrubs under his wool overcoat, shoes damp, the smell of hospital soap clinging to him. What kind of emergency? Evelyn folded her hands, chin lifted. "The watch. Your father's, it's gone." Lucas's gaze flicked to the cabinet. It moved over the empty stand, then to the laundry hall, then back to Evelyn. "When?" "This morning," she said. "I found it missing at 11. I confronted her. She stammered, said she didn't know. Then she tried to leave with the babies. I locked the door so nothing worse would happen until you got home. Something tightened along Lucas's jaw. A muscle drew a thin, hard line under his cheek. You locked her in the laundry room with 2 infants? Women like that get desperate, Evelyn said, palms opening in a show of reason. Sometimes they hurt themselves or the children. A sound cut through the conversation, thin and reedy but fierce. Jack's hungry cry ricocheting off tile. Lucas's head turned. For a moment, the practiced calm of an attending physician fell away, replaced by something unguarded and human. How long has she been in there? An hour. Maybe 2. Evelyn lifted one shoulder. They're fine. I slipped formula under the door. She breastfeeds. The sentence escaped him before he caught it. He'd learned it as he learned everything in this house, by paying attention. A nursing cover draped on the back of a chair. Bottles of pumped milk labeled with times. The way the twins settled under Maya's voice. He took 2 steps toward the laundry hall. Evelyn moved into his path, and for an instant their faces were inches apart and the mask on hers slipped. Jealousy, raw and startling, flashed there fast as lightning, then was gone. Lucas, she said, using his first name for the first time in weeks. I know girls like her. Pretty, alone, looking for an angle. She applied through an agency. Agencies miss things all the time. Evelyn's voice softened. I've been with this house for 20 years. Your mother trusted me. Your father trusted me. I have only ever protected this family. Lucas's gaze cut again to the cabinet. The emptiness of the velvet stand might as well have been a mouth laughing. His father's watch, the one that ticked on the nightstand when pneumonia filled his lungs. The one Lucas wound on the anniversaries and carried to the cemetery, hadn't left that shelf without a hand. Whose? He took out his phone and opened the Ring app, scrolled through thumbnails. At 10:12 a.m., a UPS driver placed a small box on the welcome mat. At 11:06, the housekeeper walked to the curb for the mail. At 11:19, Maya came back from the backyard with the stroller, sweat darkening her t-shirt, a burp cloth thrown over one shoulder. At 12:07, nothing. At 12:22, motion detected in the kitchen. The video was a narrow fisheye slice, with the camera angled from the breakfast nook toward the kitchen island. He'd stuck it there last winter when raccoons had gotten into the trash. He'd never taken it down. The clip showed a hand, someone's, pulling open the dish towel drawer. Evelyn shifted. You don't need to do all that, she said too quickly. If you just... Lucas was already moving, the practiced swiftness of a man whose decisions carried weight. He strode past her to the laundry room. The crying spiked, high and frantic. He slid the key into the lock and twisted. The door swung inward on a seam that hit him in the sternum. Maya sat on the tile with her back to the dryer, knees bent, one baby tucked in her arm, the other at her breast beneath the faded corner of a receiving blanket. Her hair was damp temples to nape. Her face was blotched and tear-streaked. Her eyes were fierce, the way a person's eyes get when they intend to keep 2 small humans safe at any cost. She looked up at him as if someone had opened a window in a burning room. Thank God, she said, breathless. He's still hungry and Jack won't settle, and I swear I didn't... I know, he said too fast, and realized he didn't know anything yet, except that this was wrong. Locking a mother in a closet was wrong. Listening to babies cry behind a door was wrong. He crouched, hands open. Can I take him? She hesitated, one heartbeat too, then passed Jack to him. The baby shuddered and then softened into his chest, heat seeping through the thin cotton of Lucas's scrub top. He smelled milk and baby shampoo, and the faint metallic tang of rain on the laundry room window. Somewhere in him, something unclenched. In the doorway, Evelyn hovered. You're making a mistake. Lucas stood, Jack nestled under his chin. Maybe. He looked at Maya, not at the smear of mascara under her eye, not at the milk ring dampening her shirt, but at the steadiness with which she held Jonah, the way her hand gentled the frantic kick of a newborn heel. But the first mistake today was locking this door. Ask her where the watch is, Evelyn snapped. Maya's throat worked. I dusted the cabinet at 10. It was there. I went outside with the stroller when Jonah wouldn't stop crying. I came back in at 11:20. I haven't been near the living room since. Lucas gestured with his chin toward the kitchen. Both of you now. He carried Jack, felt the baby yawn against his neck, and walked to the island. He pulled out the dish towel drawer, mind flicking to the grainy thumbnail on the app. He set Jack down in the bouncy seat and clicked the strap with one hand, a motion so practiced it surprised him. He lifted the top layer of folded towels. Something cold kissed his fingertips. A heavy circle of metal lay nestled under the second towel, its chain coiled like a sleeping snake. He pinched it by the crown and lifted it into the light. The watch's face, ivory with a hairline crack from 1989, the crack he could have traced blind, stared up at him. The kitchen went very, very quiet. Evelyn's breath hissed. "Well, what more proof do you need?" Lucas didn't look at her. He looked at the drawer, at the way the towels lay slightly crooked. He looked at the Ring camera, its little blue LED blinking from the breakfast nook. He looked at Maya, whose hands had gone still on Jonah's back, whose mouth had opened and then closed again, like she couldn't find a word that fit the shape of this moment. He set the watch on the counter. "Proof," he said softly, almost to himself, "is exactly what we're going to get." Lucas slid the watch onto the counter and exhaled through his nose, a small steadying sound that said, "I'm done guessing." He pointed to the family room. "Sit, please." He wasn't asking. Evelyn perched on the edge of an armchair, fingers laced so tightly her knuckles blanched. Maya settled on the sofa with Jonah, tucked into the crook of her arm, Jack in the bouncy seat beside Lucas's knee. The kitchen still smelled like rain and lemon oil. Outside, thunder rolled over the treetops and drifted away. "No one leaves until I have a clear timeline," he said. "No more locks. No more crying behind doors." His look held on Evelyn, then softened when it moved to Maya. "The boys come first." He tapped his phone, cast the Ring app to the TV, and scrubbed through thumbnails. The front door, the driveway, the kitchen, a wide fisheye slice from the breakfast nook he'd meant to uninstall months ago. 11:06, he narrated quietly. "Mail," he jumped. 11:19, backyard door, stroller in. "That's you, Maya," she nodded, jaw tight. He dragged forward. 12:22, motion, kitchen. The clip played, a torso just out of frame, a drawer sliding open, a forearm reaching into dish towels. No face, no voice, but the forearm wore a cardigan sleeve, navy knit, a run near the cuff, and the hand hesitated as if feeling for a specific spot. The towels lifted. The drawer shut. 4 seconds gone. Evelyn's voice found a brittle register. That could be anyone. It could. Lucas replayed the 4 seconds. He paused on a blur where the sleeve bent. "You were wearing a navy cardigan this morning." "So was she," Evelyn shot back. "Agency uniforms all look the same." Maya looked down at her t-shirt, grey cotton, nursing tank straps peeking out. "I haven't worn a sweater all day," she said, steady. "It's 80 degrees in here." Lucas let the room breathe. He could smell the starch in Evelyn's clothes, hear the tiny wet click of Jonah swallowing. He dragged the video frame by frame. There a break where a button should have caught the light. He glanced at Evelyn's cardigan. The top pearl was missing. The thread dangled like a white comma. He didn't say it. "Not yet. Here's what's going to happen," he said instead. "I'm reporting the watch as missing and recovered. I'm upgrading the cameras in common areas until I understand what happened. And I'm moving the watch somewhere safe." Evelyn's mask slipped for a heartbeat. "You don't need to embarrass the family with a report. We can handle it in-house." "We will," he said, "by creating a record that protects everyone." He looked to Maya. "I'm sorry you were locked in. That won't happen again." Maya's lips parted around a thank you that didn't quite make it out. She kissed Jonah's temple and kept her eyes on the floor. Lucas carried the watch to his office, the baby's noises following him like a tide. He opened the wall safe, a recessed square behind framed diplomas, and set the heirloom inside. Then he paused, thought of the empty velvet stand in the living room, and how easily rumor can rewrite a day. He closed the safe, returned to the cabinet, and very deliberately put the watch back on its velvet seat. Evelyn blinked. "So you just said I said I'm going to get proof." He reached under the cabinet shelf, fixed a thumb-sized camera to the underside with a strip of mounting tape, and angled the lens toward the watch. He slid another under the kitchen island, pointing at the drawer, then crossed to the mudroom and tucked a third inside the top of the pantry, all the muscle memory of sterile technique, translating to clean, precise movements. He grabbed a small UV flashlight from a toolbox. He used it to check for pet stains when he fostered dogs during residency, and clicked it on, the beam a violet cone. He dabbed an invisible ring of UV powder along the crown of the watch and the velvet cradle, harmless but bright as neon under the light. If someone handled it, he would know. When he finished, Jack had dozed into a loose, heavy sleep, his mouth slack, his lashes stuck together in wet points. Maya had burped Jonah and shifted him to her shoulder. The rhythm in the room had returned, tick of the kitchen clock, rain easing to a whisper, the tiny whale song noises babies make when they are finally full. Lucas poured water into a kettle and set it on the flame. The small domesticity of it calmed his hands. "You'll both stay for dinner," he said. "Afterward, I'll take statements. If we need to, we'll involve the agency and the police." Evelyn gave a quick, flinty laugh. "Statements? Am I under interrogation in my own house now?" "It's my house," he said, not unkindly. "And no one is under interrogation. We're writing down what happened, so that when another version of today shows up on a neighbor's porch or a Facebook parents group, we have facts." Color climbed Evelyn's throat. "You think I gossip about you?" "I think you locked a mother in a laundry room," he said. "And that isn't protection." He set mugs on the counter, chamomile for Maya, black tea for himself, then moved to the bouncy seat and ran a finger along Jack's cheek. The baby rooted in his sleep and sighed. Lucas's chest did that odd, unfamiliar ache again, like a muscle remembering it had a job other than holding him upright. After dinner, simple pasta. Steamed broccoli, a mountain of burp cloths as napkins. He took notes at the table. Timestamps, movements. "At 10 you dusted the cabinet," he said to Maya. "At 11:19 stroller in." She nodded. "At 12:22 someone opened the dish towel drawer." He looked at Evelyn. "Where were you?" "In the linen closet," she said. "Counting guest sheets." "For how long?" "An hour," she said, a shade too fast. "Maybe more." "We'll see if the hallway camera picked you up," he said mildly. She flinched just a flicker. He scribbled it down, not to punish, but to remember his own read of this moment, when doubt tried to bargain later. He walked them through boundaries. "No locked interior doors," he said. "No accusations without coming to me first. If something is missing, I'm the first call." He met Evelyn's eyes. "If you're worried about the boys, you come get me. You don't separate them from their mother." She stared at the tabletop, jaw working. At 8, he set up a portable crib in the guest room for the twins and moved the baby monitor to face the crib and the door. "Sleep here tonight," he told Maya. "You're not commuting back to South Shore with 2 infants in a storm." She started to protest, then saw the look on his face and nodded. At 9:30, the house quieted. Rain thinned to occasional taps against the window screens. He carried out the recycling and, standing under the eaves with the blue bin pressed to his shin, called the placement agency. He kept his voice low. "I need employment records on Maya Brooks," he said, "and a reference refresh. Also, please flag any complaints filed by an Evelyn Harper in the last 2 years." He listened, thanked the rep and clicked off. Back inside, he scrolled his contacts, hesitated, then texted a number he hadn't used in months. "You still doing PI work? Need a discreet consult." He didn't want to believe this required an outsider. He also didn't want to pretend it didn't. At 10:12, his phone vibrated. Kitchen cam 2, motion detected. He tapped live view. The frame was grainy in low light, but the island was there, the dish towel drawer a dark rectangle. A shadow ghosted across the floor. A figure paused by the sink, then moved toward the living room. The cabinet camera clicked on. For a second, the silhouette hung over the velvet stand like a storm cloud above a field. The person didn't touch the watch. The person stood very still and then, almost tenderly, reached out and straightened the velvet. Lucas watched the hand withdraw. Watched the navy sleeve recede. Watched the shadow leave the room and the cameras time out. He sat in the dark kitchen with the phone glowing in his palm, listening to the house breathe. He didn't sleep. At 6, he brewed coffee that tasted like cardboard and checked the powder with the UV light. The watch crown flared bright along its edges. The velvet showed a thin crescent print, faint but there. Someone had touched it and then thought better. He slipped the flashlight into his pocket and set a mug beside the sink for Evelyn. She came in 10 minutes later, punctual as sunrise, cardigan buttoned up to the throat. "Morning, doctor," she said and reached for the mug. The UV beam painted the powder like ink on skin. Along the inside of her wrist, a ghostly smear glowed lavender, a half-moon kiss no one would see under ordinary lights. She followed his gaze, frowned, and instinctively rubbed her wrist with a dishcloth. The glow didn't go away. Lucas clicked the light off. He felt no triumph, only a gravity that made his voice calm. "We're going to finish this the right way." Evelyn set the mug down carefully. "I've given my life to this house, and I'm asking you to tell me the truth in it," he said. He held her eyes level. "Because from here on there are only two paths. We fix this with honesty, or I fix it with a badge and a case number." Above them, the monitor crackled with baby breath. In the guest room, Maya stirred at the sound, hand-patting blindly for a small warm body. The storm had blown east. Sun pushed a pale gold stripe across the kitchen floor, inching toward the cabinet where, for the moment, the watch sat exactly where it belonged. Evelyn didn't blink when the UV glow caught the tender skin near her wrist. She simply lowered the mug, folded the dishcloth once, twice, and set it square on the counter, like straight edges could will the morning back into order. "Tell me the truth," Lucas said, voice even. "Right now." She stared at the window where the rain had dried to a chalky film. "I moved it. How many times?" "One," she said too quickly. Then smaller, twice. "Where?" "First to the towel drawer, then back." Her jaw tightened. "You were staring at her like she hung the moon. I needed you to see she isn't perfect." He clicked the UV light off and slipped it into his pocket. "You locked a nursing mother in a laundry room and staged a theft." "I prevented one." The words snapped out brittle like old glass. "Girls like that—" "Stop!" He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You don't get to say girls like that about anyone in this house." A muscle leaped in her cheek. "I've given 20 years to this family. I'm not rewriting your history," he said. "I'm deciding what happens now." He held out his hand. Keys, gate clicker, alarm code. For a heartbeat, Evelyn looked like she might fling the mug, bolt for the door, swear he'd regret this. Then she opened her purse, placed the items in his palm one by one, the metal cold and heavy. "You're making a mistake," she said softly, the softness worse than shouting. "She'll take what she wants and leave, and you'll be here alone with your heirlooms and your cameras." "Administrative leave, effective immediately," he said. "HR will reach out about severance. You're not to contact anyone in this household again. If you do, I involve the police." Her chin lifted, dignity reassembling itself like armor. "I'll pack my things. I had your room boxed last night," he said. "A courier will deliver them. You can go now." Something in her eyes flickered, hurt, then anger, then a glint of something like resolve. "You don't see what's being done to you," she murmured, and walked out without looking back. The kitchen exhaled. Upstairs, the baby monitor sighed with small wakeful sounds. Lucas set the keys on the counter and pressed his palms there, head down for a beat. Then he straightened, poured a fresh glass of water, and took it to the guest room. Maya was already sitting up. Hair mussed, tank wrinkled, Jonah buckled into the portable crib, gnawing his fist. Jack dozing in a half-swaddle. She read his face before he spoke. "What happened?" "She admitted moving the watch," he said. "Twice she's gone." Maya let out a breath she'd been holding for hours, then quieter. "She's going to make this ugly, I know," he said. "I'm not letting it touch you or the boys." He set the water on the nightstand. "You're safe here." Her mouth worked, a thank you snagging on exhaustion, on pride, on the months of being told not to need anything. She looked past him at the window, where the post-storm light had turned the maple leaves into coins. "I can start breakfast." "You can start by letting me make terrible pancakes," he said, and something like a smile ghosted across her face. In the kitchen, he whisked batter and burned the first batch. Maya rolled her eyes, slid in beside him, and corrected the heat with a flick of her wrist that made him unbearably aware of how intimately she knew this stove after 6 weeks. They ate leaning against the island, him standing, her perched on a stool with a baby elbow balanced on her thigh, passing a plate back and forth while she fed Jonah, and he bounced Jack. Domestic, messy, ordinary. The kind of morning that makes you understand what you're defending. Between bites, he called the agency and laid out the facts in clipped, careful sentences. "I'll send footage," he said. "Document that we resolved a staged incident, not an actual theft." He hung up and texted the PI, "Need a full background on Evelyn Harper. Prior placements, complaints, patterns. Also anything that looks like harassment or smear campaigns." "Name's Ray? We can meet today," Ray replied in under a minute. "Coffee at 10. Bring what you have. By 9:30, a locksmith was cycling through the exterior doors replacing cylinders, the chime dinging every time the front door opened and shut. The IT tech Lucas had used for the original camera setup crawled under the cabinet to hardwire the new pinhole lens. "How you want motion alerts live to your phone?" the tech asked. "Yes," Lucas said. "And cloud backup." Rolling 30 days, the doorbell rang again. This time it was a neighbor, Kathleen from 2 houses down, holding a covered Pyrex like a white flag. She set the casserole on the counter and lowered her voice. "Have you been on Nextdoor this morning?" "No." "Someone posted that the new nanny stole a gold watch and you called the police." Kathleen's eyebrows knit. "It's getting traction." Lucas opened the app. A thread unfurled, anonymous handles, grainy assumptions dressed as facts, a parade of pitchforks. He typed a statement with the same deliberate care he used closing an incision. No police were called, no theft occurred. An item was briefly misplaced and recovered. "We take the safety of our children and the dignity of everyone who works in our home seriously. Please avoid speculation." Then, privately, he messaged the moderator with screenshots and asked that the thread be locked. He set the phone down. Maya read his expression again. "What is it?" "Noise," he said. "I'll handle it." She nodded, then glanced at the twins. "I can keep them out of your way while you meet your investigator?" "You're not in my way," he said. "You're the point." At 10, Ray Delgado arrived in a navy blazer over a band tee, a messenger bag slung crossbody. She had the efficient presence of someone who'd moved through courtrooms and bail offices and knew how to speak fluent systems. They sat at the kitchen table with coffee and a legal pad between them, while the babies dozed under the monitor's hush. "Walk me through," Ray said. Pen poised. He outlined everything from the empty velvet stand to the UV glow on Evelyn's wrist. Ray's eyebrows ticked up at the camera placements. "You're thorough." "I'm a pediatric surgeon," he said. "We're paid to be." She smiled without softness. "Good, that saves time. I'll run Evelyn through civil records, employment histories, social media, any complaints with placement agencies. If she's done this before, we'll find it." She tapped the pad. "And in case she escalates, false reports, welfare checks, child services, we prep a file now. Pediatrician notes, vaccination cards, overnight logs, photographs, the works. Child services?" Maya repeated. Her voice went small on the second word. "It's a common move," Ray said, gentle but not minimizing. "You're a young mother, twins, new job. People who want to hurt you will frame concern as protecting kids. We're not going to let them." Lucas felt something cold skate under his sternum. "What do you need from me?" "Names of past employers, especially anyone Evelyn worked for before your parents. Any odd incidents you remember. And," she looked to Maya, "the name you worked under at your last hotel job. Sometimes they dig there for leverage." "Brooks," Maya said. "Same as now." "I never changed it." "Good," Ray said, scribbling. "I'll be in touch by end of day." After Ray left, Lucas strapped car seats into his SUV like a man building a wall, checking each latch twice. He stood back, hands on hips. "You're not taking the L anymore," he said. "If you need to go out, I drive. Or I get a service we trust." Maya watched him from the doorway, a dish towel folded like a worry stone in her hands. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not." He looked up, met her eyes, decided not to look away. "You're the family we have." She folded the towel again and again until it was a tight square. "Do people like us get to have that?" "Yes," he said, no hesitation. "Yes." The day tried hard to be normal. Maya timed naps and stuck smiley face stickers on the notebook next to tummy time. Lucas answered patient emails, scheduled an elective surgery for Friday, and talked to HR about processing Evelyn's leave. In the afternoon, the twins practiced rolling and discovered that squealing in harmony delighted them both so much they had to do it until they hiccuped. For a few blessed hours, the threat lived only at the edges, on locked posts and muted group threads and the quiet hum of a PI's search. At 4, the doorbell rang again. A woman stood on the porch in a trench coat too crisp for the weather, hair sleek. Smile the exact shape people wear when they want to sell you something or take something you love. "Dr. Bennett?" she said. "I'm Carmen Green. We met at the Neighborhood Association last fall." He didn't remember her, but he nodded, because life in a good zip code trains you to nod. "What can I do for you, Miss Green?" "It's awkward," she said, lowering her voice, eyes shifting over his shoulder into the hall where a baby cooed. But I thought you should know your nanny. Worked for a friend of mine in Old Town. There was a situation with missing jewelry. They didn't press charges because, you know." She flicked her gaze toward the coup. "But with everything on the app, which friend?" He asked, her smile held. "I'm not at liberty to say. What dates? What agency placed her? What police report didn't your friend file?" He kept his tone polite. He kept it surgical. Color rose under Carmen's foundation. "I'm trying to help. You're repeating a rumor someone gave you," he said. "If that someone was Evelyn Harper, I suggest you be more careful whom you let use your name." She blinked. The name landed. Excuse me?" She tried, but he was already closing the door in a way that was still technically gracious. He texted Ray, "Carmen Green just paid me a visit with a script. Might be tied to Evelyn. Can you see if they're connected?" Ray replied with a thumbs up and a line, "Already on it." Maya stood in the foyer with Jack on her hip, watching his face. "I'm the reason your nice life is getting messy," she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a fact spoken by someone trained to take blame before it was thrown. "Things were messy already," he said, surprising himself with the truth of it. "I just didn't let myself see it." He touched Jack's socked foot with one finger. "We'll write our own version." That evening he cooked again. Something he couldn't ruin, sheet pan chicken and carrots, everything tossed with olive oil and salt. After bath, he wrapped the twins in towels with bear ears and walked them down the hall 2 at a time, Maya behind him laughing at the sway of his shoulders under 8 extra pounds. He tucked them into the crib and stood there with her, both of them listening to that symphony of settling. Little sighs, blanket rustle. The monitor's soft white noise hush. "Thank you," she whispered. And he wasn't sure whether she meant for dinner, for the locks, for believing her when believing cost him history. He could have said a lot. He said the one thing he knew he could keep. "We're going to be okay." Downstairs his phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Ray. 2 prior households reported suspected thefts while Evelyn was employed. No charges. Both resolved after the item turned up. One daughter in Wilmette broke off an engagement after anonymous messages smeared her fiancé. Working to confirm sender, but odds are high. Call in the morning, also watch for escalation. Patterns say she won't let go clean. He stood in the quiet kitchen with the screen lighting his hand, the cabinets returning his reflection in chopped-up rectangles. Upstairs, the baby's breathing softened into sleep. In the guest room, a woman who had learned to make herself small took up exactly the space she and her sons needed. He went to the living room and sat on the edge of the couch opposite the mahogany cabinet. The watch lay on its velvet like a moon. He lifted the UV light, hesitated, and slipped it back into his pocket. He didn't need to check. He already knew the truth. What mattered now wasn't catching another print. It was building a perimeter around the 3 people in his house and insisting against noise and rumor and history that this time no one got to define them but themselves. By sunrise, the storm had rinsed the city clean, but the house felt like it was holding its breath. Lucas brewed coffee that tasted like cardboard and lay the red binder Ray had told him to build on the counter. Birth certificates, vaccination cards, pediatrician notes, photos of the nursery, car seat receipts, even the twins' feeding logs with times and ounces in his careful hand. He wasn't superstitious, but he kept a hand on the binder as if some part of safety could be transferred by touch. The doorbell rang at 8:17. A woman stood on the stoop with a canvas tote and a state badge clipped to her lapel. "Good morning. Sandra Owens with DCFS. We received a hotline call about infants in possible neglect at this address." Maya stiffened where she stood with Jonah in a sling. She'd dressed the boys in matching footies, blue with little whales, and braided her hair so tightly the part shone. You could hide how you felt under neatness. You could try. Lucas stepped back to let Sandra in, heartbeat strangely loud in his ears. "You can see the kids, their room, whatever you need. We've had someone trying to harass us. Our PI thinks this is part of a campaign. We treat every report the same," Sandra said evenly. "Let's start with the basics." It was a tour of a life they were building in real time. Sandra checked the smoke detectors, the outlet covers, the baby monitor. She glanced at the fridge calendar where well visits were circled in blue and tummy time was penciled at 10 a.m. She examined the car seats and tugged their belts. She held each baby, fingers practiced under tiny armpits, and asked questions in a voice that assumed chaos but hoped for competence. "Any injuries? Sleep schedule? Who else is in the home?" She wrote, checked, nodded. Maya moved with the precise economy of someone who had long ago learned not to waste anyone's time. Heat a bottle, wipe a counter, slip a pacifier into a searching mouth. When Sandra asked about the laundry room, something flickered across Maya's face. She handed Jonah to Lucas and told the story plainly. No self-defense, no sob story. Just the facts, the lock, the crying, the apology that hadn't come. Sandra listened. "Do you have anything to corroborate your account?" Lucas opened the binder, slid out a printed screenshot of the watch in the cabinet and a still from the ring clip. "We also have video and timestamps," he said, "and a record with the placement agency." Sandra studied the pages, glanced at the babies sleeping heavy in their swaddles, looked at the house that smelled like lemon oil and damp socks and something like home. "I'm not seeing any signs of neglect," she said finally. "Case will be closed as unfounded. Anonymous calls can be weaponized. It's ugly and it wastes resources, but we document patterns. If someone continues to file, we escalate consequences." When she left, Maya sagged back against the wall and closed her eyes. "I hate that strangers can walk in and decide what kind of mother I am." "They didn't decide anything," Lucas said, not quite trusting his voice. He set the binder down as if it weighed 20 pounds. "You did. You decide every hour." He drove them to the 4-month well visit that afternoon because he couldn't stand the thought of them on a bus with a fresh rumour glued to the back of their coats. The waiting room at Dr. Patel's clinic was a mural of animals reading books. Jonas tried to eat a paper giraffe taped to the exam table. Daniel solemnly crinkled the blue drape and then screeched with delight at the sound. Dr. Patel charted their growth, peered into soft mouths, listened to small chests with a stethoscope shaped like a cartoon frog. "Strong lungs," she said straight-faced, as Jack announced his displeasure at the shot with operatic breadth. "Great head control, too. You're doing everything right." Maya swallowed hard. Sometimes the simplest sentences landed like absolution. On the way home, they stopped at Target for diapers. Maya kept the boys in the stroller, even though Jack would rather be held. She needed the feeling of a carapace around them, something with straps and buckles and a cup holder. In the baby aisle, a woman with sprayed shell hair and a trench too crisp for November paused near the wipes and pretended to compare brands, while her phone's camera reflected their stroller in its black eye. Maya felt the prickle along her neck and turned the stroller so the twins faced the end cap. Tiny socks, rainbows in neat rows. "Can I help you?" she asked, even, with the difference between fragrance-free and sensitive. The woman blinked and smiled a smile you learn by watching people get away with things. "Just admiring your babies." "Admire them from not photographing range," Maya said, and pushed away. Her knees were shaking by the time they reached the registers. Lucas met them at the curb, jaw tight. He'd sat in the cafe with a laptop and tried 200 times in 20 minutes to concentrate on a journal club paper. Now he loaded boxes of diapers into the trunk like a man stacking sandbags. He watched the trenchcoat woman in the mirror as she pivoted her phone to take a wide shot of the parking lot. "Got a plate?" he asked low. "Dealer frame," Maya said. "Rental, of course." That night, Ray called with her voice in bullet points. "Two previous employers who talk like country clubs and act like courts of law," she said. "Both report suspected theft that evaporated after their house manager, Evelyn, found the missing item in a place the nanny used. No charges." Lots of whispers. In Wilmette, a 22-year-old broke an engagement after anonymous texts claimed her fiancé had another girlfriend. The texts came from a prepaid. The purchase timestamp overlaps with Evelyn's CVS loyalty card at that location, 10 minutes later. Not conclusive, but it paints. "What's next?" Lucas asked. "Paper. We go to court with the stalking statute and a petition for an order of protection. The standard of proof isn't criminal. It's credibility plus pattern. We bring DCFS's unfounded report, the video, the UV photos, the neighbor app thread, and the casing in Target if security will give me the footage. The judge won't like kids being used as leverage." "Do it," Lucas said. "I'll sign whatever you put in front of me." He hung up and found Maya in the nursery, folding onesies the way she did when the world made her feel 6 inches tall, edges aligned, stacks perfect, something she could finish and point to. "See, this is good." He leaned on the door jamb and watched her fingers smooth cotton. "Ray's filing. We'll have a hearing date in a few days." "Good," she said, but her eyes were on the drawer with tiny socks. "She's not going to stop because a judge tells her to." "We are going to make it harder to hurt you," he said. "And I'm going to stand in the way of anything that tries." She looked up. "You can't be everywhere." "No," he said, "but I can be here." They ate late, leftover chicken turned into tacos with chopped avocado and a squeeze of lime. After, Lucas cleaned the kitchen with a surgeon's boredom for repetitive tasks and a father's pleasure in the hum of a dishwasher when the babies slept. Maya took a shower hot enough to fog the mirror to white. When she came back down in a sweatshirt with bleach speckles and socks that didn't match, he had made tea. She sat, wrapped both hands around the mug and let the heat sink into her. "I used to think stability was a couch that didn't fold out and a month when the power didn't get shut off," she said softly. "Then I thought maybe it was just the same adult showing up every day and not leaving when something got hard." "You picked a surgeon," he said, trying for light. "We'll have to negotiate around the showing up every day part." "You've been here every day since this started," she said. "That's the part my brain keeps circling." He didn't answer. He reached across the island and touched the back of her hand. Her skin was warm from the mug. She didn't pull away. Close to midnight, his phone buzzed. Motion, front walk. He opened the live view. A sedan idled across the street, windows up, running lights off. A figure sat in the driver's seat, with the kind of stillness that isn't relaxation but charge, like a sprinter loaded and waiting for the gun. After a full minute, the car pulled away without its headlights, drifted past the house and turned at the corner. The next morning, the hospital called. Not the OR scheduler, not a nurse, HR. "Dr. Bennett, do you have a minute?" The voice was crisp and careful. A member of the board forwarded a community discussion about a situation at your home. "We absolutely respect your private life, but you know how it is when donors read things. We just want to make sure there isn't a boundary issue with domestic staff that could reflect on the institution." He stared at the skyline. Beyond his office window, Lake Michigan flat as a sheet of stainless steel, and felt the anger bloom from behind his ribs out into his chest. "There is a boundary issue," he said. "A former employee has been harassing my family. The police have been informed. I will not be discussing my nanny's integrity with a donor who reads anonymous gossip." A pause. Of course. We support our physicians. Please keep us updated." He clicked off and texted Ray. "Hospital board got wind via gossip. And car idled outside last night. No plates visible on the cam." "Anything we can do?" Ray, files in. "I'll pull traffic cams at the corner. Meanwhile, vary your routines. And if she comes to the door, do not engage without me on the line." At noon, a courier knocked. The boxes from Evelyn's room. Lucas had instructed the service to deliver to a storage locker. Instead, they dropped them here with a shrug and a signature from a driver who wanted to be anywhere else. The boxes were uniform, brown, numbered, sealed with the kind of clear tape that tears like cello. He stood with a box cutter in his hand and told himself not to open them. He dragged them to the garage and told himself again. He opened the smallest. Inside, a photo of his mother at a summer barbecue when he was 12. A grocery list in his father's hand, milk, Advil, dill, a dried corsage he didn't recognize. He inhaled, exhaled, and pasted the lid back on. He would not go digging in the archaeology of someone's obsession. He wheeled the stack to the far corner and turned the key in the storage closet lock. At 3, Target called. Security would provide footage to Ray with a subpoena. Until then, they could confirm a woman in a trench had shadowed Maya's stroller from baby wipes to registers and out to the curb. "She didn't shop," the manager said, "just watched." Lucas thanked him and sat in the quiet. In the calm just before bath time, he sang badly while Maya blew bubbles into the sink and the boys kicked like otters. They wrapped each baby burrito tight and kissed damp foreheads that smelled faintly of lavender shampoo and warm milk. They carried them to the crib shoulder to shoulder, a choreography that felt practiced and brand new all at once. When the house finally settled, he walked into the living room and faced the cabinet with his father's watch. He'd left it on the velvet on purpose, bait and statement both. He angled the UV light and watched for a glare that didn't come. Nobody had touched it today. A small thing. A win you could fit on a chain. His phone buzzed at 9:41. Ray again. "Got something," she said, voice edged with the satisfaction of a puzzle sliding together. "The number that texted your neighbor Carmen the script about missing jewelry traces back to a prepaid used to call 3 other numbers in the last month. One is a salon in Rogers Park, where Evelyn does her hair. Another is a CVS, where she bought the burner. The third, the hotline for DCFS, exact timestamp as your report." He leaned his forehead against the cool glass of the cabinet door and closed his eyes. "Can we make that stick?" "It's enough for a judge to see pattern and intent," Ray said. "It's enough to get you a temporary order of protection while we wait on a hearing. And it's enough to set a trap she won't be able to help walking into." He opened his eyes. In the glass, he saw himself reflected back, tired, older, steadier than he expected, and behind him the hallway light like a small lighthouse, and the shadow of a woman who had learned to carry 3 lives at once. "What kind of trap?" "The kind where she thinks she's finally getting what she wants," Ray said. And she says it out loud on record. He pictured a coffee cup clinking, a chair scraping, the precise click a phone makes when you press record. He pictured sunlight on the maple like coins again, but this time he wasn't waiting for a knock. He was opening the door and deciding who came through. "Tell me what to do," he said. "Tomorrow morning," Ray said, "you're going to call Evelyn, and you're going to tell her you've had a change of heart." Ray's plan fit into the morning like a scalpel into a gloved hand. No drama, no speeches, just steps. At 8:03 a.m., Lucas dialed the number he'd deleted last night and retyped from memory. He stood at the kitchen window watching early sun lay thin pewter across the driveway. In the guest room, the twins babbled to each other through the mesh of the crib, consonants like pebbles in a stream. Maya's voice drifted down the hall, soft, ordinary, counting onesies as she folded them, because counting kept your hands from shaking. Evelyn picked up on the second ring. "Doctor, I've been thinking," he said, letting fatigue thread his words, "about yesterday, about the board at the hospital, about optics." A heartbeat of silence. "Go on. You've been with this house forever. You understand how the neighborhood talks." "I shouldn't have moved so fast." Her exhale was audible. "It's not too late to do the right thing. Can we talk?" he asked. "Not here." She named a place without thinking, which told him she'd been there before when she wanted to watch from a distance. A cafe off Elston with a parking lot shielded by an L shape of brick. "Half an hour," she said. "Half an hour," he agreed and hung up. Ray, on speaker at the island, didn't bother with praise. "Good. Here's how this works. You keep it in public, you keep your voice low, and you don't accuse. You give her room. She'll fill it. If she starts to draw a roadmap of her own behavior, don't interrupt, don't speed her up, don't display judgment. Let her hang the picture straight. What if she doesn't?" He asked. "She will," Ray said. "But if she swerves, I'll nudge. I'll be 10 feet behind you, laptop open. Look like I'm ghostwriting a breakup email. If she asks, I'm no one." Maya followed them to the door with Jack on her hip and a burp cloth slung like a white flag over her shoulder. "Be careful," she said. It wasn't performative. She said it the way you say put on your seatbelt or watch the curb. He almost told her he would be more than careful. He almost said he wouldn't let a single thing reach back into this house from the outside and unmake what they were building by inches. Instead, he touched the top of Jack's head and felt the baby lean into his hand like a cat. "I'll text when it's done." The cafe smelled like burnt espresso and pastry sugar. 2 construction guys in neon vests argued gently about the cubs at a 2-top near the window. A woman with a laptop had spread 3 legal pads like maps across her square of laminate. Ray slid in ahead of him, ordered black coffee with the reflex of a cop who didn't intend to enjoy it, and took a small table along the back wall. Evelyn arrived in a coat he recognized from winters in his parents' house, a camel wool that had seen more holidays than most marriages. Her hair was pinned in the neat French twist she wore on days she wanted to look unassailable. She didn't hug him. She didn't sit until he'd sat first. She did, however, reach across the table toward his wrist, the way someone might reach toward a child's forehead to check for fever. He moved his hand to his lap. "You said optics," she said briskly. "I assume the board read the filth on that neighborhood site." "They did," he said, and she folded her hands as if bracing for a verdict that might finally go her way. "And it made me realize I can't have chaos in my home," he said. "I need stability." I need loyalty, she softened just a degree. I've been telling you that. Maybe I didn't hear you, he said. He let a sigh drag itself out of his chest. Maybe I wanted to think everyone was good. Everyone is not good, she said. Her mouth pinched. People like her? He shook his head once. Let's not label. Let's solve. The watch can't go missing again. Calls to agencies can't be made. The app can't fill with stories. I have a surgery schedule. I have 2 babies. I need this to stop. Then stop choosing her, Evelyn said simply. The rest will go quiet. What if I can't do that, he said, and kept his voice mild. What if the hospital and the neighborhood need something more concrete than a change in staff? What if they need a narrative they can believe with their wallet? She blinked. Narrative. A story they'll accept, he said. That the watch was never missing. That nothing was stolen. That rumors are just that. He let the words drift like spin on a ball. That if anything happened, it was a misunderstanding, and you, as house manager, tried your best to protect the family. He watched it land. He watched her head tilt. He watched 20 years of reflex gather itself. You don't need to carry this, she said at last. Voice softened to the exact sedative formula she'd used when he broke his wrist at 11, and his mother cried in the kitchen. Let me. How? He asked as if he were asking about a stain on a shirt. You put the watch somewhere sensible, she said. You tell anyone who asks it was there all along, and the stand was being cleaned. You make a donation to the foundation your board member loves, and suddenly his concern is the flu that passes. And as for the rest, she lifted one shoulder. People get bored if you feed them something else. The rest, he said. She met his eyes. This was the part where she needed him to be complicit. I can make a few calls. The app thread dies. The whisperers get new toys. What about the hotline call, he asked. What about Target? What about Carmen? Evelyn didn't flinch. She had not expected him to say the names out loud. She had expected him to be grateful for a relief he didn't understand. But she was too deep into her own plan to pivot now. Those were mistakes, she said, crisp as folding a corner of a sheet. You were ignoring the danger. I had to make you see it. By calling DCFS, her eyes flicked to the left. Most people look down when they lie. Evelyn looked off stage, like a prompter might feed her a better line. Anonymous tips are part of how children get protected. And Carmen? She owes me, Evelyn said. She wanted to be part of your circle. I let her pass desserts at your father's retirement party. People think proximity is power. And the watch, he said. She folded her hands again and took a breath as if she were about to read a recipe. I moved it to get your attention, she said. And I put it back when it had done its job. He let the quiet open like a well. He didn't lower the bucket. He waited. Evelyn filled it. You weren't supposed to humiliate me, she added, voice tightening. Boxes, a courier. After everything I've done, like, what have you done, he asked, and hoped his voice didn't show how his hands itched to. Shove the chair back and go home and lock every door and stand on the quay, sir. Front step like a man built out of brick. Kept. Women like her from eating you alive, she said. Kept your father's temper from burning your mother. Kept this house standing when grief would have knocked a lesser place flat. She leaned in. I know where the fuses blow when it's humid. I know which contractor cuts corners. I know the code to the safe, because your mother asked me to remember it in case you forgot and needed a memory. I know what you eat when you can't taste anything after a 14-hour shift. I know the names of nurse managers who will cover you when you need to go home because a child has a fever. That is what I have done. And you think that entitles you to decide who can live in my house. It entitles me to protect you, she said. And then the mask slipped, and the word she'd avoided for 20 years fell out and lay there between the sugar shaker and the salt packet. Because I love you. He didn't look away. He didn't look down. He did not pretend he hadn't heard it. He also didn't answer with cruelty. You love the version of me you made yourself part of, he said quietly. You love the geography where your chair was in the kitchen and your coat on the hook and your judgment the air we breathed. I love you, she said again, brittle and blazing. And I am not going to lose you to a girl who learned how to make herself small enough to fit in your pocket. Behind him, Ray slid her spoon in her coffee and let it tap twice against the ceramic signal. The ambient noise was steady. Milk steaming, register drawer opening. The distinct hush of a cafe where nobody expects a scene. Lucas looked at the small mountain of sugar packets Evelyn had been tidying into a perfect square. "You moved the watch," he said, steady. "You called DCFS, you recruited Carmen. You fed the app. You watched our house at night." She glanced up at the last one. Someone had to know when she snuck out. Maya hadn't snuck anywhere. The thought rose and cracked against his teeth like a wave. "I need you to say the words," he said. "For the record, we're going to put this into." Her eyes narrowed. "Record." He tilted his head slightly toward the counter. The cafe had a sign by the register. "For your safety and ours, audio and video monitoring in use." Ray had chosen this place on purpose. No reasonable expectation of privacy in a room wired for theft and lawsuits. The law didn't care about the romance of confession. It cared about where your feet were when you made it. Evelyn followed his gaze. A pulse jumped in her throat. She sat very still. "Evelyn," he said softly, "I need you to tell me you did those things. Or I need you to tell me you didn't, so I can take a different set of steps that will be bad for both of us." Something in her recalibrated. She stared at him a long beat, calculating. She could deny and gamble that he wouldn't push. She could admit and keep some dignity by controlling the narrative. She chose the latter. Control was a spine. Without it, she folded. "I moved the watch," she said, each word placed like a teacup. "I called the hotline. I asked Carmen to warn you. I posted the first thread. I drove by at night. I did it because you wouldn't listen, and because I can see what she's doing to you, and because I love you." "Thank you," Ray said from behind Lucas. Simple and unflavored, as she stood and set a card on the table. "Ray Delgado," she said, "private investigator. We'll be in touch with service." Evelyn's chin lifted, fury and humiliation flushing her skin. "You brought a stranger." "I brought someone to help end this," Lucas said. He stood. His hands didn't shake. He hadn't known if they would. "You ought not to contact me, Maya, or the children in any way. Not directly. Not through proxies. Not through rumor with a return address made of smoke. You can't." Ray's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and slid it across the table. An email had landed with the low thud of a charge. "Order of protection emergency signed. You were served via email and will receive personal service today," Ray said. "You step within 100 yards of their home, daycare, pediatrician, hospital or car, you'll be cuffed before you can finish telling yourself it's love." Evelyn's mouth went hard and mean. "This is not over." "It is," Lucas said. He surprised himself with how gentle it sounded. He put cash on the table for coffee and walked out into a Chicago morning, scrubbed pale and high by wind off the lake. He didn't go home yet. He drove 2 neighborhoods over and stood in a park where teenagers cut third period and joggers believed expensive shoes cured grief. He called the hospital HR rep back and gave them 3 sentences they could repeat to any donor who asked, "A former employee has been harassing my family. Law enforcement is involved. Out of respect for the process and for the privacy of my children, I won't be discussing this further." He forwarded the court order to the agency, to the moderator of the neighborhood app, to Kathleen 2 doors down, who replied with a single heart and a second message. "I'm on your lawn with a lawn chair. Try me." Back at the house, Maya opened the door before he could use his keys, which made something in his chest go light, like a house you loved deciding it would recognize you. She searched his face, then his hands. "You're okay?" "I'm okay," he said. "It's filed. It's served." She admitted everything. Maya's breath left her like a held wave finally collapsing. She leaned her shoulder into the door jamb and laughed once, the sort of laugh that starts as relief and ends, where tears would start if you let them. I kept thinking there would be one more shoe. "There will be more shoes," he said, honesty automatic now. "But we have umbrellas," she snorted. Terrible metaphor. "I'm sleep-deprived," he said. "Come on. Let's eat whatever's left of last night." In the kitchen, the twins were on the mat, Jonah on his back marveling at his own hands, Jack on his stomach, pushing up on his arms as if the living room were a mountain he intended to summit by noon. Lucas kissed both damp crowns and then checked the front camera out of reflex. On the sidewalk, Kathleen waved without standing up from a ridiculous beach chair in a puffer coat, a thermos balanced on her belly like a drum. He waved back. Community, he thought, sometimes looked like casserole and sometimes like a woman in a folding throne. They ate standing up because plates were large and counters were good, and chairs were far. Lucas told Maya how Evelyn's love had broken like porcelain in a dish tub. Maya told him how she had braided her hair too tight because if her scalp hurt a little, her hands wouldn't shake. He told her about the HR call and the one sentence he was going to repeat until it rewrote the way people tried to pry. She told him she wanted to drive again someday without checking the rearview mirror for a sedan with its running lights off. When the twins slept, they sat on the floor with their shoulders touching under the pretense of sorting toys. He reached for a rattle shaped like a fox. She reached at the same time. They both withdrew their hands and then didn't. "I'm not great at needing people," she said, looking at the rattle instead of him. "Needing makes you obvious." "I'm learning to be obvious," he said. "It's exhausting," she smiled. "You're getting good at it." He turned, leaned, and kissed her. Not the kiss of someone trying to barter for a future or paper over a terror, but the quiet kind you give when the house is finally still, and you can feel your own pulse return to a speed you recognize. She kissed him back with the steady confidence of someone who had made a decision in a laundry room and had not had a reason to revise it. Upstairs, one of the twins exploded into that sudden baby wail that says, "I woke up and the universe is rude." They broke apart laughing and stood in one motion that had already learned to be choreography. "I've got Jack," he said. "I've got Jonah," she said. At the door he paused. "Ray says to expect one last swing. People like Evelyn don't put down a story they've carried this long without trying to write an ending." "What does a last swing look like?" Maya asked. "Emails to the hospital, maybe." Another anonymous tip, say, "An attempt to get in through somebody we forgot to warn." "Let her swing," Maya said, and he heard in her voice the steel of a woman who had learned to be soft on purpose. "We're not made of glass." That night he slept for the first time in days. He dreamed of the twins in the park, sunlight gilding their hair, the watch on the velvet not as a trap anymore but a memory. Just before dawn, his phone buzzed with a text from Ray that only said, "One more thing. Call me when you wake up." He woke to the word "thing" like an alarm and reached blindly for the phone even as in the next room, a small voice burbled into morning. Ray's text was waiting when he rolled over. "One more thing. Call me when you're up." He called from the hallway so the monitor's soft hiss could still reach his ear. "Tell me." "She didn't go home and lick her wounds," Ray said. "Two things overnight. First, an anonymous email to 3 hospital board members alleging you're cohabiting with an employee and endangering infants. The phrasing matches her burner texts. Council can swat it down with the order of protection and her admission, but be ready for the sting. And the second, 2 calls from a prepaid to CPD's non-emergency line right after midnight. Same burner pattern as the hotline. They're the kind of reports that escalate into swatting. I already flagged your address with CPD's watch commander. They'll do a callback before they send units, but vary your routine and keep your phone on." He stood still until his breathing matched the monitor's white noise. "Copy." By 9, he'd emailed the hospital's HR and general counsel, "Here is the emergency order of protection and a written admission from the person harassing my family. I will not be discussing my home life further." He CC'd the surgery chair, who called back within 5 minutes and said what Lucas needed most to hear. "We've got your back. Let legal handle the board." They tried to make a morning anyway. Blocks on the floor. Oatmeal that dried like cement on Jonah's chin. Jack shrieking with delight because the dog-eared fox rattle made exactly the sound a small tyrant loves. Maya moved through the kitchen in a sweatshirt and leggings, hair in a loose knot. The old hotel habit of neatness softened now into something like ease. He watched her tuck a blanket one-handed and thought, ordinary as a miracle if you've had to fight for it. At 11:06, his phone rang from a withheld number. "Dr. Bennett?" "This is CPD. We received a call reporting screaming and a man with a weapon at your address. Is everyone safe right now?" He felt the adrenaline hit and pass through him like a wave that knows the shore is coming. "Everyone is safe. 2 infants are napping. My partner is with me, and we have an active protection order against a person making false reports." "Understood. We're still sending a car for a visual welfare check. Officer will call when she's outside so nobody's surprised." "Thank you." He hung up and looked at Maya. She knew from the set of his shoulders. "They called?" "They called. They're doing it right." They went to the porch together when the cruiser rolled up slowly. Light bar dark, no doors flung open, no hands on holsters. The officer, short, calm. the kind of presence that settles rather than stirs, kept one hand visible and lifted the other in a small wave. "Everyone okay?" "Everyone's okay," Lucas said, and handed over copies of the order, the DCFS closure, Ray's card. She glanced at the papers, at the baby monitor app pulsing blue in his palm, at the neighbor 2 doors down in a ridiculous beach chair under a puffer coat giving her a little chin-up that said, "Community Watch, live. We'll note a likely false report," she said. "If we tie it to your respondent, it's a violation. Call if anything else pops." When the cruiser left, Maya stood on the porch and exhaled through her hands. "The way my body reacts," she said, half laughing. "Like I need a second skeleton." "Your body kept 2 humans alive," he said. "It can handle a false report." At Nap's End, with the house smelling faintly of coffee and baby shampoo, the hospital general counsel called. "We've responded to the board. We attached the order and an affidavit from your investigator. If anyone escalates, have Ray loop us in." "Thank you," he said, and meant it in the way you mean a bridge holds when you're halfway across. At 4, Kathleen texted, "Your UPS guy just left." Also, someone in a dark wig and sunglasses is parked 2 houses down pretending to read a menu. I am 90% sure it's her. "I'm not moving this lawn chair." He pulled up the curb cam. The sedan was silver, the plate a dealer frame, the driver's face partly occluded by cheap sunglasses and a too dark bob. The posture, though, the stillness that wasn't rest so much as coil, was familiar now. He called Ray on speaker. 2 houses down. "Dark wig. I'm 3 minutes out," she said. "Call CPD and say violation in progress." "Do not engage," he called. "Order of protection violation. Respondent is within 100 yards in a vehicle." He gave the make, the street, the direction the sedan would have to go to leave. "We're staying inside." They did stay inside. It didn't feel like hiding. It felt like not giving away the one thing they had that Evelyn wanted to rearrange, their center. From the front windows, the scene unfolded in those strange, slow rhythms adrenaline gives to ordinary things. Kathleen, in her throne of nylon, did not budge. 2 cruisers glided up without lights. Ray's Subaru slid into a space at the far curb. The officers stepped out, hands easy and angled toward the sedan. One officer tapped the glass. The driver's eyes flicked to the mirror, then forward, then to the mirror again. The officer tapped once more and pointed to the curb. The door opened. Evelyn took off the wig first, which made something in Lucas break that he hadn't expected. A kind of grief for what obsession had made of someone who once knew the code to the safe because his mother trusted her. She said something the porch cam didn't catch and spread her hands. The officer nodded toward the sidewalk, toward Ray, who held up her phone with the order displayed like a shield. Another cruiser rolled up behind the sedan. Nobody raised a voice. Nobody grabbed. They did the slow choreography of lawful consequence. Verify identity, verify order, verify distance on a map. Then, "Ma'am, you're under arrest for violation of an order of protection and filing a false report." The cuffs came out. Evelyn didn't fight. She did, however, turn once and look straight up at the porch camera. She didn't mouth, "I'm sorry." She mouthed, "This is your fault." After they drove her away, Kathleen rose with comic dignity, shook out her coat and texted, "I'm going to make lasagna." "Don't argue." Maya stood at the window a long beat after the cruisers turned the corner. "When you're poor," she said, "people get to be terrible to you in ways that never make the news. This is the first time I've watched someone be terrible to me and seen the world say no out loud." He slid his hand to the small of her back. "The world needs practice," he said. "We'll help it." Ray came in with her usual economy. No squeals, no theatrics, just results. She had the burner and a printout of the order in her bag, she said. "Plus a key ring with blanks cut for your make of lock, and your alarm code written on a sticky note as if the universe wouldn't notice." She grimaced. "Obsession makes people sloppy. The ASA we flagged at the courthouse is on call tonight. They're going to file the violation and tack on the false report count tied to today and the call earlier. You'll get a victim advocate appointment tomorrow." Maya sat because sitting is sometimes how you keep from floating off the ground. "What happens now?" "Arraignment in the morning," Ray said. "A hearing date next week on converting your order to a plenary one. 2 years. The DA will offer a plea if she admits the violation and agrees to stay away." If she doesn't, you testify, I testify, the officer testifies, the paperwork testifies for us. What about the hospital board email? Lucas asked. Already dying, Ray said. Your counsel's letter did it. Nobody wants to be the donor who's on the wrong side of a stalking case. After she left, the house did that thing it had learned to do, return to itself. He chopped peppers while Maya narrated a board book about a very industrious caterpillar, and the twins banged plastic cups like a percussion section with a grudge. They ate on the floor with plates in a semicircle, and the fox rattle as centerpiece. They gave the boys baths that turned the bathroom into a splash pad and themselves into damp, laughing scaffolds. They tucked both babies into the crib and stood there a moment to watch their chests scissor up and down in the soft blue glow. In the living room, he took the watch from the velvet and set it in the safe. Not as bait anymore, as something that belonged to memory, not to manipulation. When he closed the safe, he realized he could finally breathe without counting the seconds it took. On the couch, Maya leaned her head on his shoulder. I keep waiting to feel happy, she said. And then I remind myself happy is not a switch. It's a room you go back into a lot on purpose. We're in it, he said. We can stand here as long as you want. Her laugh was soft. You're getting good at metaphors, Doctor. His phone buzzed. A short text from the surgery chair. Board issue resolved. Focus on the kids. Another from Kathleen. Lasagna on your porch. A third from Ray. Arraignment at 9. I'll meet you out front. Sleep. He turned the phone face down and slid lower on the couch until they were a tangle of knees and throw blanket, and quiet. Upstairs, the monitor hummed its ocean. The house had a heartbeat again. Before dawn, one of the twins cried out in that way that means nothing is wrong, except everything is happening all at once inside a small body. They went together, half asleep, practiced, smiling because even the interruptions felt like ordinary, and ordinary was the thing they'd begged the universe for without saying the words out loud. When they settled back into bed, Maya pressed her palm to her stomach and frowned lightly. You okay? He whispered. Yeah, she said, surprised at the thought that had brushed past. Just lightheaded for a second. Water, he said, already sliding out because you carry what you can when you can, for as long as it takes. Downstairs, a casserole sat under foil with Kathleen scrawled in Sharpie and a post-it, take what you need. We have more chairs. He smiled, poured a glass and took the stairs 2 at a time, balancing the water in one hand and the knowledge in the other that the last swing had landed and they were still standing. The morning would come. They would be there to meet it. The arraignment moved like a slow machine with a single purpose. Fluorescent lights, a wooden bench that made your back ache. Ray beside them with her legal pad and a steadying nod. When the clerk read out the charge, violation of an order of protection, false reporting, Evelyn stood in county issue grey, hair down, face bare in a way that made her look younger and somehow more dangerous, like the mask had been the only thing holding her together. Guilty, she said to the first count after conferring with the public defender. No contest to the second. The judge's eyes were sharp in a tired face. Plenary order of protection granted for 2 years. No contact, direct or indirect, including through third parties or electronic means. Mandatory counseling. Probation 18 months. Any violation and you serve time. The gavel wasn't a flourish. It was punctuation. Outside, the wind off the lake cut through Lucas's coat and set flags snapping along the courthouse steps. A blogger with a microphone tried a breathless question about scandal. Ray lifted her card once and the question died on the tape. No comment, she said. This is a matter of safety. Respect the court's order. They walked away into a day that felt, for the first time in weeks, unscripted. Life didn't switch back to normal. It learned a new shape. CPD stopped by twice more to say the case had moved off their watch list unless a new call came in. The hospital board dropped its curiosity the moment General Counsel used the word stalking in an internal memo and attached the order. On the neighborhood app, the thread that had set everything on fire quieted into recipe swaps and lost cats. When someone tried to resurrect rumor under a fresh handle, the moderator pinned a simple post. Our community will not host harassment. Thread closed. Maya woke 2 weeks later to the sour-sweet smell of coffee and the dizzy drift of knees that don't know which way the day will go. She crossed to the bathroom, shut the door soft so the twins wouldn't stir, and held a thin white stick like it could bite. 5 minutes later, she sat on the edge of the tub with a hand over her mouth and a ridiculous smile she couldn't swallow if she tried. She didn't tell him with balloons or shoes or a slogan onesie. She slid the test into the empty velvet box where the watch had sat for years, like a small expensive clock, telling only one kind of time, closed the lid, and set it on the kitchen island. When he wandered in from the nursery, hair wild from liftoffs and landings with 2 infants masquerading as pilots, she nudged the box across the quartz. He opened it and went very still. For a heartbeat, he didn't say a word. Then he did the unsurgeon thing, the thing he'd learned in the weeks since a laundry room door clicked shut on the wrong side of mercy. He let his face say everything. He kissed her like thank God and like new life, and like a silent promise to count a new, small heartbeat with the same attention he gave to every monitor in his OR. Lucky, he whispered into her hair. Brave, she whispered back, because she had decided long ago that luck was what people called it when you kept showing up. Spring thawed into a real Chicago summer, humid and loud and generous. The twins learned to haul themselves upright and gallop along the couch with a triumphant squeal that made you forgive fingerprints on glass. Lucas learned to pack a diaper bag like a trauma kit, and to triage, I dropped my pacifier against, I discovered gravity. Maya learned that naps are not a luxury. They are a pact you make with your future self. They went to court once more. This time it was for a step-parent adoption. The courtroom was smaller, friendlier, the judge with a Cubs mug and a stuffed bear tucked among case files. You understand this is forever? He asked Lucas. I've been acting like it for months, Lucas said. Today I'm just catching the paperwork up. Jonah tried to eat the ceremonial pen. Jack pounded the bench like a tiny bailiff. The judge laughed, signed 3 times and nodded to the clerk. Congratulations, Dad. When they came out into the hallway, their neighbor Kathleen was waiting on a bench with a bakery box and an air horn that the courthouse guard very politely removed. I promised lasagna, she said, but you can't carry that in a hallway, so it's cake. The frosting said family in crooked blue letters and tasted like sugar and some kind of permission. In late August, they stood in the backyard with 50 feet of twinkle lights and a Bluetooth speaker that cut out whenever someone walked past it. They didn't call it a wedding. They called it a vow in a place that already knew their ordinary days. Ray wore jeans and a blazer and cried anyway. Dr. Patel brought a casserole and a gift card with a note that said, "For nights when the only thing anyone can cook is cereal." Kathleen held a camera and said things like, "Tilt your chin and you'll thank me later." Lucas's best friend from residency grilled steaks until the grill ran, out of propane, and then finished them in the oven like a man who refused to let symbolism win over dinner. Lucas had set one thing aside to say out loud. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the watch, newly cleaned by a mason so gentle they felt like a priest. "I stopped winding this when my father died," he said, holding the weight of it between finger and thumb. It felt like time should stay where it was. "Then I met you." He glanced at the twins, at the curve Maya made around the belly that had started to announce itself with a tidy, undeniable roundness. "Now I want every second to count forward." He wound 3 turns, set the hands to the actual minute, and slid the chain into a glass shadow box with a photo, his father's palm resting on a boy's head in a backyard that looked somehow smaller than this one did tonight. He hung the box on a tiny nail just inside the back door, where you pass 100 times a day without noticing. The tick was soft but present if you stood still. "Not an altar," he said, "just a reminder that time is for living." The last twist arrived not as a threat, but as a thin white envelope forwarded by Ray. Inside, a letter on cheap paper. No return address, but the victim advocate's stamp in the corner suggested it had come through official channels. The handwriting was neat to the point of pain. "I am not asking for forgiveness." The first line didn't dress itself up as anything else. It stated itself and stood there. "I am writing because my counselor said there is a difference between remorse and wanting to be forgiven, and I need to practice the first if I ever want to be a person who doesn't break things when she's afraid." I told myself I was protecting you. I was not. I was protecting a story I told myself for 20 years because it was easier than being alone. I am leaving the city when my probation allows it. I will not contact you again. I wish you safety. Maya read it at the kitchen table and put it back in the envelope without the drama of tearing or fire. "I thought I'd want to throw it away," she said, "but I think I'll put it with the court papers, not because she earned a place in our drawer, because the truth does." Lucas slid the envelope into the red binder Ray had made them build on a morning that smelled like lemon oil and fear. The binder was thinner now, cases closed, orders finalized, but they kept it anyway. A quiet archive of a season, when they learned that safety is a thing you build and rebuild, not a thing you're handed. On a warm evening in October, Maya went into labor. Labor in real life is less like a movie and more like an internal tide deciding its time, and then 1,000 small decisions made out loud. They drove the familiar route to the hospital with the twin car seats in the back and a duffel that contained too much of everything. In a delivery room that buzzed with competent people and that sterile hospital smell that meant Lucas would always be half at work, even when he wasn't, a daughter arrived with a wail that felt like a trumpet. She had a head of dark hair and a furious scowl and a grip like a summons. "Hi," Maya whispered, or lowering her voice to the pitch of church. "You're here." "Welcome," Lucas said, hoarse in a way that made the nurse glance up and then look away to give the moment its own space. They named her Grace because it felt unearned and exactly right. When they brought her home, the twins stood on the couch like court jesters and peered over the arm at the tiny newcomer. Jack tried to hand her the fox rattle. Jonah offered a pacifier with the seriousness of a judge. Maya and Lucas stood behind them with the kind of tired that doesn't feel like defeat. It feels like a long walk set to right. In the weeks that followed, nights folded into days and back again in a stitched line you could trace with your finger. The watch ticked by the door. The red binder stayed on a high shelf. Kathleen appeared like a benevolent storm with soup and gossip. Ray sent one text on the day the 2-year order went permanent. It held. Dr. Patel wrote "thriving" in a chart and squeezed Maya's shoulder in a way that said the word meant more than growth curves. On a Sunday that smelled like cinnamon toast and wet leaves, Lucas stood at the kitchen window with a baby asleep on his chest and watched Maya teach the twins to kick a ball in the yard. Jonah tripped and laughed. Jack missed and laughed harder. Maya clapped and called out instructions that were 90% encouragement and 10% chaos management. The porch cam caught nothing more dramatic than a squirrel hauling a stolen bagel across the steps. The cabinet kept its shadows to itself. The watch told the time without needing to be watched. Lucas pressed his cheek to Grace's hair and let the quiet wake him. He thought of a locked door and a violet smear on a wrist and a service of papers on a cafe table. He thought of a kitchen island where a velvet box had held a different kind of ticking, that small plastic window that turned the whole room brighter. He thought finally of the thing that had made all the difference. Not the cameras, not the binder, not the judge or the locks or the expertly worded emails. The difference had been a decision made in a house with 2 crying infants. To believe a person when believing would cost something, and to keep believing when the cost rose. Maya came in with the twins barreling at her knees and a smear of grass on her cheek. She looked at him with a question he loved, because it had become the shape of their days. "You good?" "Yeah," he said, rocking the baby who dreamed of milk. "We're good." They were not untouchable. That was never the point. They were a family. It was enough. And as the watch ticked, not like a trap but like a heartbeat, the house exhaled and held its own in the quiet.